Hi there, Year 2 agents. It's good to see you. I hope you're all incredibly well, and I hope you liked the missions that you had on Monday. Now, as I said in our comprehension mission, we are going to be working on some miniature books this week, inspired by the British Library and all the miniature books they have in their collection. We're going to have a go at making some. I've made one today. This is my mini book. It's a very small one. It's my little book of the lockdown, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But I thought I'd start today by showing you how you can make these books really easily. There's some guides on Newsround which show you how to make the book in the way that it's been advised by the British Library, but I've got a sneaky shortcut way, and I'm going to show you that now. Okay, so here is my guide on how to make a little book. You can either make this size or this size. I'm going to show you how to make the larger one first. So you start by folding your piece of paper in half. Carefully creasing, and then in half again, trying your best to match up the edges, and then in half once more, and then you can unfold it until we're back to this size. We've got 4 squares, and you want to make sure that you're cutting from the edge where it's folded. You're just going to cut through this middle line until you get to the centre of those 4 squares, just like that. And then we're going to open up our paper. We're going to fold it in half this way, and you'll see that it then creates this cut at the top. And when we squash it together and fold it round, we're left with lots of pages for the inside of our mini book, which is exactly what I've done here on this sized one. If you want to make half the size, you just start with a piece of A4 paper, cut it in half and follow the same steps. Once you've got that section, you want to make yourself a cover. And for your cover, you just lay out your book and leaving an edge a little bit further around the outside so it'll cover all your pages. Now you could use a piece of card if you have any, or some packaging like an old cereal box. You could use wrapping paper if you've got any nice colourful wrapping paper around for this. I used a magazine for my spine strip on one of these. I'll show you in a second. So you trim that out. Fold that in half for your cover. And then you just place your pages inside, and then if you have got an elastic band or a hairband, a piece of thread, that sort of thing to go around the outside, that will then keep all your pages in the middle for you. So that's how to make your little books for the lockdown, and then we're going to talk about what you might want to put inside them. Great, so once you've made your books, we need to start thinking about what we're going to include in our miniature books. And hopefully you've seen they're quite easy to make, so you can make more than one. You can try a few different things out. Now this one here, my mini lockdown book, is actually sort of like a memory for me. It's a little diary of some of the things that I've been up to since the lockdown began. And I thought that might be a nice record, because I know that really well. So when you know something really well, you're able to write about it more easily. And I've actually illustrated my book using AutoDraw on the computer, and I've typed my words in. But actually I'm starting another book now, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. I'm drawing myself, using my own illustrations and using my handwriting in there. But you've got a choice. You could do different books, some typed up, some using the illustrations. So my first page here says, during the lockdown, the sun shone and my grass grew. There was a lot of mowing. I've never mown my lawn as much as I have this year. So that's something that I'm definitely going to remember about it. This page here says, every Thursday and Friday I homeschooled my little boys. Sam's reading came on leaps and bounds. So I put a picture of a book in there as a reminder. This picture here with the hat and sunglasses says, Rowledge School became HQ. I spent a lot of time wearing secret agent sunglasses. So I thought that might help me remember that bit. And actually I'm only halfway through my book so far. This is the last page I've done so far, but I'm just doing some today, some tomorrow. I'm going to work on it in drips and drabs. This says, there was no football on television during the lockdown. I missed it a lot. Mrs. Yates didn't miss it. She hasn't missed it at all, actually, so far. So that is my little book so far, and mine's in the very small size. The one that I'm doing, where I'm drawing my own pictures and doing my own writing, I've made the slightly bigger size because I'm going to find that easier to do my handwriting in. But you don't have to just write about what you got up to in lockdown, although you might find that an easy starting point. I certainly did. My book that I'm going for is a superhero book, because one of the things I'm good at drawing, there's not very many things that I can draw well, but one of them is superheroes. So I'm going to do mine a little bit like a comic book and draw lots of pictures of superheroes and just have a few words or actions, bits of speech in there for my heroes as they fly through. You could choose to do a sci-fi book inspired by a favourite film. So if you're into something like Star Wars, you might choose to draw yours might be a Star Wars comic. It might be a Star Wars adventure that hasn't been told yet. Again, the more familiar you are with the subject, the easier you're going to find it to write. You might write an animal adventure, like one about this cool cat here in sunglasses. You could do an animal fact book if you wanted, a tiny little fact book. And as it said on the British Library the other day, actually they started these tiny books a long time ago for little boys and girls to read to their teddies and dolls, and they're full of information. It was a way of trying to teach children to read more easily. So you could make a tiny fact book about your favourite animals. We've done a lot of work on our jungle animals, so you could try and transfer that into one of these miniature books. Again, a subject you know really well. You might choose to do something magical. I thought fairy stories might lend themselves really well, about tiny little creatures to a tiny little book. I thought that worked quite well. Equally, you might do a story about a massive giant, and why not? And speaking of giants, you might use some learning you've already done in Year 2 as inspiration for your books. You might choose to do a story about a dragon, or again about the BFG, something that you've covered this year. That might be a really good story for you to put in. Ultimately, though, it's completely up to you. You could use any of those ideas, you could use none of the ideas. The best thing about a tiny book is it doesn't take you very long to fill, it doesn't take you very long to make, and you might find that actually you start a story and think, actually that's not quite right, and that's just a draft, and you might fold another piece of paper and have another go. That's okay. I'm giving you the next couple of days to work on these, and you might be like me, fill half the book and then have a break and come back to it the next day. You might be able to get through one, maybe two books in one day and come back the next day and have some more ideas before you kind of decide on which one's going to be your favourite final one, or you might end up with a little library of your own miniature books. But the stories or the fact writes, they are completely up to you. I want to give this as a free choice right. If you're not sure where to begin and you're thinking, oh, this is really tricky to find a starting point, go for a lockdown diary. Fill in this book with some of the things that really remind you about what it's been like in this strange time when you haven't been in school, because it might be the kind of thing that you come to look at in a few years, or maybe when you're a grown-up and think, oh gosh, I didn't remember all those little things. So if you're not sure of what to write, that's a great starting point. Otherwise, the stories are up to you. Good luck, agents.